The New York primary is on Tuesday. You've already won your home state of Canada. Now you're in my home state of New York City, and people are still mad. They're mad at you for saying that they have, quote, New York values. What did you mean by that?
So when I said New York values, I was merely trying to say that I value New York. Except I was saying it backwards, the way Yoda would say it.
I love Yoda. I watch her every morning with Kathy Lee.
There you had Ted Cruz last night on Jimmy Fallon. Cruz comes under fire again for his New York values comments. That remark didn't win him any favors during a GOP gala where Cruz was largely ignored by the crowd. The comment is also not winning him any new friends in New York or around the country as Cruz's poll numbers seem to be plunging. Take a look. According to a recent Fox News poll, he's now 18 points behind Donald Trump, who has about 45% of the vote nationwide. Cruz is now battling with John Kasich, who has about 25% of the vote for that number 2 spot. Last month, Cruz was only a few points behind the frontrunner.
All right, let's welcome in our roundtable. Before we start taking your calls, we'll introduce Liz Peek, columnist at the Fiscal Times, and Brent Budowsky, who is a columnist at The Hill. Guys, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hello.
All right, I want to get a quick reaction from Brent and Liz about those poll numbers. Ted Cruz seems to be on the slide. John Kasich seems to be on the rise. Liz, first to you.
Well, I think, first of all, I'd say that Donald Trump had an extremely poor couple of weeks, and he has rebounded, partly because he's in his home turf here in New York, and he's going to do very well here. So there's a little bit of a momentum game going on, I think. And at the same time, he has presented Cruz's success in places like Colorado as sort of dirty tricks, rightly or wrongly. He's sort of suggesting that Cruz is outmaneuvering him as opposed to really winning on policy issues or winning with voters or whatever. So I actually would attribute it more to maybe Donald Trump coming back than Ted Cruz really kind of having stumbled in any big significant way, because that really hasn't happened.
Right, sure. He's struggling. Brent, what do you think?
Well, I think she's right to the degree that Trump is coming back. I think New York is a special case. As a New Yorker myself, I think they're going to pay him back on primary day for some of his comments about New York values. I also am picking up, not only in New York, but in other states, that Kasich is making a little bit of a move, and Cruz is fading a little bit in post-New York states. I think that's the thing to watch. Where my view differs than most pundits, if you will.
Well, that's why we have you on, Brent. We want a different opinion. We want to welcome in one of our callers now. We have Andrea from Michigan who's standing by. Andrea, do you have a question, comment? What would you like to say?
Yes, more of a comment, and specifically with Colorado. I'm a Michigan, and I voted already. I am a Trump supporter. But I just want to say, it seems like everybody's in denial over that Colorado thing. They changed their rules in August. It hasn't been like years and years. And how are you going to have voting without letting the people vote? I don't care if they put it in the hands of the delegates. That's just not right. I would have been outraged if they came to Michigan and a few delegates voted for me. I've never had that happen, and I'm 58 years old. So I think that was dirty pool there.
All right. Well, Andrea, thanks for your call. Brent, what do you think about this? I mean, these are the conventions. We had the memo from Sean Spicer earlier saying that these are the rules, and it was up to the campaigns to know the rules.
Oh, yeah, I agree with the lady caller. I think she's totally right. I mean, the idea of having delegates chosen without a primary and without a caucus, I don't think is very American and not for either party. So I think she's right. Yes, the rules were written. Same reason Democrats did superdelegate rules. They want to be able to fix the nomination if they don't like what the people choose. So I don't agree with Donald Trump about much.
They want to hedge their bets. All right, let's get another caller. Let's try to get another caller in here. So we got Stan from Texas joining us on the line. Stan, thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
What's your question or your comment?
I just wanted to state that I believe that it's obvious that the RNC is trying to derail the Trump train. They said that's what they were going to do, and they've certainly done it. People like Karl Rove, these people have come out of the woodwork. I voted for Ted Cruz for senator. I voted for Donald Trump for president. You've got a man who can certainly straighten out the economy, rebuild our military, and set the country in a direction with somebody who shows absolute leadership skills. I don't believe there's anybody else running that has shown that, and I don't believe there's anybody else that can pull out of a hat at the convention that can do the same thing.
Well, Stan, we appreciate your call. We'll send this one and get Liz's response to Stan's call. We talked about the perception, but this is clearly the perception, and in politics, perception as important as reality. And these Trump supporters really feel like this thing is being pulled away from the person they voted for.
Well, I'd say two things, and I hope I can remember the second. First, you never know. First, let's remember that going back to the whole issue of where Trump is and how he's been doing lately and versus Ted Cruz, Trump had an unbelievable amount of negative advertising and press thrown at him in a 2 or 3 week period, which does take a toll. And it did take a little bit of a toll. And you had this thing with Corey Lewandowski, his campaign manager, having, being accused of having manhandled a reporter and stuff. There was sort of like and then you had Trump tripping over the abortion question. So it was like a tsunami of bad news for him. And now that has all sort of abated. So I think it's not surprising that he's coming back. But to your caller's point, look, Donald Trump is doing a very good job of positioning himself as being a victim in case he doesn't get the nomination. And he's going to basically blame the RNC and the people, the forces that are allied against him, and they are plentiful. There's no question about it. Colorado was a perfect place to sort of let that fly because Colorado, as your other caller suggested, really looks like a terrible outcome.
Yeah.
I don't know how they choose their
delegate. It's so true when you look at this. And when we've talked about this in the past too, Trump was called a whiner for everything that he said about having everything ripped away from him. But he said, I'm whining, and I'm going to keep whining until I win. That's typical of Trump style.
That is.
He gets called something that for most people would be a pejorative term, a derogatory term, but he turns it around and owns it, and then tries to use it as a strength of his.
Well, and it doesn't help when you have people suggesting or changing the rules as the election goes.
All right.
That doesn't help either.
Again, perception all comes down to perception. We got more callers standing by. Just hang on. We'll be back after a short commercial break. We're going to talk about the Democratic debate. What was your favorite part or least favorite part last night? It sure was fun to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, things got a little personal.
Yeah, we want your reaction. Don't forget, it's not too late to call in. We still have time to take some callers. You can reach us at 877-NEWSMAX. That's 877-639-7619.
I do question her judgment. I question a judgment which voted for the war in Iraq.
Well, the people of New York voted for me twice to be their senator from New York, and President Obama trusted my judgment enough to ask me to be Secretary of State for the United States.
I am sure a lot of people are very surprised to learn that you supported raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Wait a minute.
That's just not accurate.
I have stood on the debate stage with Senator Sanders 8 prior times.
Excuse me.
I have said the
Secretary,
exact same
Senator,
thing.
please. Are you seriously blaming Vermont and implicitly Senator Sanders for New York's gun violence?
No, of course not. Of course not. This is a serious difference between us. And what I want to start by saying, it's not a laughing matter.
Yeah, things got a little heated, very heated last night during the Democrats' most combative debate yet, and probably most personal. And that's where we'd like to welcome back today's roundtable. Rejoining us once again, Liz Peek, columnist at the Fiscal Times, and Brent Budowsky. He is a columnist at The Hill. Thank you both for sticking around. Brent, I want to start with you. What was your reaction to what is now the 9th Democratic debate so far?
Well, I like a wrestling match every now and then. I'm not sure I want to see it in a presidential campaign.
Okay.
It's actually it's quite interesting. from Hillary's point of view, she is piqued because she thinks the nomination is hers, that she had a right to do it, that it basically was indeed fixed in many ways to the degree they can. And why is Bernie not getting out? From Bernie's point of view, he thinks the deck is stacked in politics like he thinks it is in finance, and he's upset and angry. Every poll shows him running stronger than Hillary in a general election, but the party gives him no respect, the establishment. So it's kind of a match made somewhere other than heaven for that kind of a debate, and it showed yesterday. I think what you saw last night was what they really think.
Liz, who do you think won this wrestling match?
Good question. Well, I would say this. I think Sanders won to the extent that he, as your other guest suggested, he keeps pushing Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And the audience loved it. And I think she's on the defensive. It's amazing that she's on the defensive, right? She really does have the experience, the credentials. She has the enormous super PAC. She has the party behind her. And here she's sort of trying to bat away this pesky mosquito that will not go away.
I think you could tell from Bernie Sanders, kind of body language last night, he does feel like he maybe can win now. And he seems like he has that behind him. I do want to bring in another caller we have joining us. We have Mark on the phone with us from Connecticut. How's it going, Mark? Great to hear from you.
Good evening, John. Good evening, panel. Bipartisan question, since it applies to everybody. Why can't the moderator during the debates have an on-off switch for when the candidate refuses to answer a question and filibusters? Why can't they have an off switch?
I've asked myself that all the time.
I would say stay tuned, Mark. I mean, what do you guys think about this? We have seen debates that are a long way from, you think all the way back to Kennedy versus Nixon in 1960 and how far the debates have come. Everything is so stodgy, but now it's almost, you have the crowd noise and everything. I think we very well may see a cutoff switch in the near future, maybe the next election cycle. What do you guys think? Liz, you think that could possibly be in the bag of tricks?
I don't know.
I think reminds us more of reality television?
It's not a terrible idea because, what we've seen early on in the Republican debates and now more recently as this Democratic debate cycle got more heated is that everybody just talks over everybody else. They really don't play by the rules. I mean, everybody wants rules, right? Well, they're not supposed to talk beyond the buzzer and they all do that. So it would it would impose some order to shut it down. But here's the thing. We all know that the networks running these things, it's all about ratings. And so when you have these insulting questions or questions that really seem really kind of personal and so forth, it's all about ginning up just exactly the kind of confrontation we saw last night. And I think, honestly, after this election, there's going to be a lot of soul searching about the role of media in this process because Donald Trump has gone so far.
It's so true. But also don't forget the Republican Party had a lot of soul searching about all the debates last time. They don't want to have so many people up on stage, and it didn't really work out so well. I don't know if maybe they should leave it alone. One more caller we want to get to, and we got Sue from Kansas joining us on the line.
My hometown.
Hey, Sue, what's your question or comment?
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Well, I have a question, and that is that in the state of Kansas, we have 40 delegates to the National Republican Convention. And they are tied to the candidate that they got given to here at our local level until such time as they are released by that candidate.
Right.
And so everybody keeps talking about the second ballot, third ballot thing. And what I'm wondering is how many states are like Kansas in that there isn't any second ballot, third ballot in play unless there's some kind of negotiations behind the scene to get somebody to release their delegates and allow them to vote for somebody else.
All right, I think it's a multi-part question. We'll send it to Brent, who has worked in the halls of Senate, probably has the greatest knowledge on this. But it varies state by state. Brent, if you can answer that question, though, for us.
Yeah, it does vary state by state. If the caller's right about Kansas, they have a good rule. In New York, the party will pick the delegates for Trump and for Cruz. And so the Cruz and Trump delegates may not really be Cruz and Trump delegates. And while they may be bound, here's the big secret. While they may be bound on the first ballot to vote for a candidate, they are not bound on rules votes, credentials votes, and the votes that could be the fixing of the convention before you even get to nominating candidates. That's the hidden ball that the establishment is playing.
Right, and you got to watch so closely. We talked yesterday with the chairman of the Palm Beach County Republican Party. You know, in Florida, all the delegates are bound to Trump because he won the primary here for the first 3 ballots. And in some states, it's 1 ballot. Some states, it's 2 ballots. So, Sue, you know, you should probably just check with your party officials or check the rules because it can vary quite a bit state by state depending on where you are. Liz?
If I could just weigh in for a moment.
Sure.
It turns out 59% of the delegates are released after the first ballot. And then I think the second ballot, after the second ballot, is more like 80%. So there's a very quick loosening, if you will, of that of those ties.
Yeah.
Brent, I want to ask you, we were talking about changing the rules and how tricky it gets. And we talked earlier about this proposal that the RNC is going to be looking at about possibly giving more power to the delegates versus the actual chairman. In this case, it would be Paul Ryan. You know, the person who drafted this bill says it gives more transparency. Do you agree with that, or is it just going to further infuriate people that already believe that the system is rigged against them?
Well, on its face, it would give more transparency, but the question is who chooses the delegates that would have that greater power. That's where the hidden ball is.
Right.
And by the way, if I could, one quick sentence here on Mark's point earlier. The reason I'll never be chosen to moderate a debate is that if I were doing that debate last night, first I would have looked at Hillary and said, when you say Vermont, your Vermont is causing all those guns to kill New Yorkers, Hillary, isn't that a lot of baloney? It ain't true. And Bernie, you're attacking Hillary over the 1994 crime bill, which you voted for. Isn't that hypocritical? Isn't that phony? And I'd have been much tougher trying to get the truth out from both candidates.
I'd watch, Brent. I'd be quite interested.
I would. He might put them in timeout, too, I bet.
All right, Liz and Brent, thanks so much for being with us today. And thanks to our callers who called in. Great getting your comments on the air as well. We appreciate that.
Just ahead here on Newsmax Now, multi-millionaire and entrepreneur Mae McCarthy reveals the spiritual steps for financial abundance. And the presidential field provides an abundance of material for the late night comics. Your Friday edition of Headlines and Punchlines, straight ahead.